reporters Linda Mnisi and Zianda Ngcobo are standing by in Nkandla to give us the latest on this, and also who will be joining this conversation will be our politics editor, Ngalwa. Good evening to you both, and certainly a busy day it has been. I'll begin with you, Linda. Certainly you've been there for quite some time, a few days now, where we've seen different kinds of groupings come to show their support for the former president. There's also been much speculation about his whereabouts and where he might be and if he could say anything today. But as we saw on a clip earlier on, he was in fact sighted with Amabutho this afternoon.
Absolutely, Bongi, where, as you rightfully mentioned, there's been speculation around his whereabouts, with some even suggesting that he had been in Durban consulting his legal team about his next step. There was big anticipation also around his briefing that's set to take place tomorrow, and that was the first time really people were expecting to see him. So when earlier on his foundation indicated that that briefing would take place in Durban, the idea then was that, okay, perhaps he's in Durban, but this afternoon we got a shock of our lives when Amabutho, who are led by Mgidili, arriving outside his home, with the former president. You should have seen an electric atmosphere, Bongi, where everybody excited to see the former president, the man they're here to support and defend. So did a walkabout just outside his home with, of course, all those supporters. But you also mentioned the issue around, people that have come throughout the week. We saw the group that came from Mpumalanga also here today, mentioning that also in the evening they will be going back to where they come from. They did not mention how long they'll be staying, but the message has been one: we are going to defend the former president, and we're not going to allow anybody to imprison him.
All right, and Zianda, certainly the developments then around the Constitutional Court then agreeing to hear the rescission application, certainly a significant development this afternoon, which then paves the way even for Tuesday's application, as he is seeking to then stay that prison sentence.
Well, Bongi, you see, now this is the thing regarding what is happening within the legal fraternity. There are questions around whether or not the Pietermaritzburg High Court even has the jurisdiction to actually hear this stay application by the former president. And knowing that he will be making submissions before the Constitutional Court on the 12th of July, which some are already saying, Bongiwe, seems to be the former president doing what he should have done to begin with regarding what punitive measures should be taken against him. You recall that Chief Justice Mogoeng had invited the former president in April already to actually say how he believes the courts should treat this matter. And now there's a lot of discussion then around this rescission application that the former president has now lodged before the Constitutional Court, just by virtue of the fact that there is a sense coming some quarters within the legal fraternity that the Constitutional Court could have explored other ways to actually punish the former president, but also that they took a step that is not quite that's unprecedented, in the sense that with contempt of court proceedings, they usually give a suspended sentence and a fine. However, the apex court decided to actually give him a custodial sentence and say he must go straight to prison for this particular matter. And I'll tell you what, Bongiwe, a short while ago, KZN Premier and ANC chairperson here in this province, Sihle Zikalala, flanked by his secretary, Mdumiseni Ntulu, spoke to us a short while ago addressing this particular matter, saying that this Constitutional Court judgment has divided society, in particular in this province that we find ourselves in. And they came to have a discussion with the former president regarding a political management of this current situation. I asked Bongiwe, the leadership that was speaking to us here, whether or not they believe the former president has a responsibility then, given the fact that they've conceded that this matter is dividing society, that whether or not the former president actually has a responsibility to come out and speak to his supporters to quell any tensions or threats for violence. Well, I've got a very vague answer to say, well, this is exactly why they've come here, and over the coming days they will be monitoring the situation as the leadership in this province. But they also say the former president is in high spirits, and you would have seen him being flanked by Amabutho earlier on. And so this situation tomorrow, we know then that Zuma will be addressing the nation at 6 o'clock tomorrow. That is D-Day. That is when the 5 days for him to hand himself over lapses. And so 72 hours, Tuesday would be within the 72 hours, and again that will be a test then for whether or not that court, the Pietermaritzburg High Court, can actually now stay the arrest, given the fact that that came from the apex courts in the land. So certainly several legal aspects to this particular matter, Bongiwe.
It does look like one complicated matter, Ziyanda. I tell you what, Sbu, there's been conversations around whether or not the ANC can indeed move on from this moment, because the country may well move on because the news cycle changes all the time. But certainly, as Sihle Zikalala has alluded to then, that this has in fact divided some sectors of society, and not only society, Sbu, I might add, certainly the ANC.
No, certainly, Bongiwe, and particularly in this province of KwaZulu-Natal, because Jacob Zuma has always been a factor in the ANC, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. And the ANC has previously, in its previous elections, from the time he was elected president in 2007, they actually had Jacob Zuma as their Trojan horse, if I may call it, Bongiwe, that they went to make inroads in areas where the ANC did not traditionally have support. So he's a person who has that kind of an appeal. And that can also explain, Bongiwe, why earlier on you saw not just ANC members, not just so-called MKMVA members and military fatigues, but also you saw Amabutho, which are Zulu regiments. Now, if anyone is a scholar of history or understands Zulu history, they will tell you that Amabutho are actually the regiments of the king. As to in what capacity they were here in, that we do not know. But what is clear, though, is that they are aligning themselves with the former president, which shows you the level of support that the former president enjoys, particularly here in KwaZulu-Natal. And that also perhaps also explains why the ANC leadership had to be here. In fact, Bongiwe, you and I were together in Pietermaritzburg when Mtumiseni Ntuli, the provincial secretary of the ANC, said that